welcome to the Run Amok Books portion of the Small Book Fair. I'm Vern Smith, editor of a forthcoming crime fiction anthology called Jacked, which comes out July 1st. It will be the first title on Run Amok's new imprint, Run Amok Crime. Tonight is a bit of a sneak peek, and we'll hear from 4 of our 21 writers, including Shane Levy, Meredith Craig, Zephaniah Soul, and Andrew Miller. Before we do, please allow me to talk just a little about Jacked. If you consult Merriam-Webster, you'll see 5 definitions for the word revolving around excitement, custom cars, muscles, injury, and the state of being high. Once we got into colloquialisms, regional idioms, and what some still consider profane, write your own joke here because we have an answer for that too. The possibilities seemed endless, as in any good crime story should be able to answer to the concept. So with that settled, we threw all our high-minded themes out the virtual window and went off in search of the best fresh crime fiction we could get our hands on without a single worry of what any of it could be about. Genre, non-genre, we didn't care. Our only concern was that somewhere a law had to be fractured. Little did any of us know that these authors would have to survive a grueling selection process that saw 370 stories auditioned, meaning each had to be very, very good, yes, but also singular in such a way as to give this book another gear. No pressure at all. To give you an idea of what we found, here's a little sample starting with Shane Levy. Shane is a writer and researcher based in the rainy northwest of Ireland, with work accepted by publications including Pop Shot, the Illustrated Magazine of New Writing, the Ekphrastic Review, Lockshore Lines, and Poems from the Lockdown. Now, Shane, if you could, I understand the story you're about to read from, Fighting the Last War, was inspired by a visit to the cinema that was basically ruined by 4 chaotic teenage boys who responded to calls for quiet with astonished anger. Can you tell us a little bit about the actual experience and how that ended up translating into this fabulous piece of fiction?
Yeah, thank you. I guess like most events in my life, very little really happened, but a lot happened in my mind. I went to the cinema for the first time back after COVID, really looking forward to James Bond, ridiculous, expensive movie. And 4 teenage boys are sitting beside me, making a terrible racket, annoying me and everyone around us. So I quietly say, fellas, keep it down. And boy, do they not like it. They didn't keep it down. And for the rest of the film, I kept thinking, what am I meant to do? I could escalate and, speak louder, but then they could kind of call my bluff because I'm not actually going to physically drag these guys out. And I could walk all the way down and walk around and make a complaint, but I don't think that their cinema staff are going to drag these kids out either. And a part of me was wondering, why am I getting so het up about this? And I think that it's one of the real themes of this story is that we all kind of carry scars. And some of the scars that I carried, even though they're not so bad, were from being a teenager, being their age, being 16, and being kind of terrified of these kids. And I'm not terrified of them anymore. I'm twice the size of them, but nevertheless, they're getting to me. And I think over the days after that event, it sort of stuck with me. And I began to think about what the hell they were thinking about this irritating older guy who was telling them off. And I suppose I was trying to put myself in their shoes and be somewhat compassionate to them, but also critical. And ideas formed, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm also interested in what you were just talking about, the escalation from verbal barbs to actual violence. One of the things that struck me here after reading your piece was how naturally it progressed from trash talk into an actual thrashing. And I do think it is very much an Irish story, but there are also some universal themes that I was able to relate to, and things that I've witnessed and things that I've experienced. So while you were writing Fighting the Last War, how much planning did you do in terms of the actual escalation?
Very little. I was quite pleased, really, because it came out very naturally, and I wrote this quite quickly. Um, I think that it is a very common thing that, especially guys that age, but men in particular, when challenged, it's quite hard to just back down or brush it off. There's a weird temptation to escalate, which I think mostly in a modern society you really don't need to do. But some like primitive instinct is saying, accelerate this situation.
Mhm.
And I'm a very calm and even tempered kind of person, so I don't, but my imagination is spiraling out of control. So I could very clearly see how these kids just touch on, the most vulnerable and sensitive parts of each other to set each other off in this weird kind of power play that's so unnecessary and in the end tragic.
All right. Well, could you give us a little sample? Could you read an excerpt for us?
All right, I'm going to start from the beginning. Myself and Mulligan and Gaffney and Robber are all at James Bond, all sprawled out at the back with a few sweets and big cups of Coke. A shitty day. That prick Maloney had called me up in maths for not doing my homework, and then it was lashing rain for PE, and I cut my knee doing a sliding tackle. Mr. O'Donnell said we had to wash the cut because of the muck, and he splashed some fucking Dettol on it. Christ, that hurt. Then I went home, and the house was freezing with no food, and my mum was out. She'd gone and left the front door open again and all. Anyway, Robber's brother works in the cinema, and he got us a few tickets, so we're having a good laugh. Myself and Robber are right up at the back, and Gaffney and Mulligan sitting in front of us, which is good crack, obviously, for taking the piss. This bird comes on one of the ads, and she looks a bit like Gaffney's mam, so I lean forward. Is that your mam, Gaffney? Fuck off, says he. Jesus, I didn't know your mother was an actress, says Robber, kind of getting into it. She's a porn star, I say, and Gaffney tells me to fuck off, and we all have a good laugh. The lights go down. James Bond is with this blonde bird, and Robert gives me the nudge. I'm like, would you ride her? I would, he says. Would you ride Gaffney's mam, I say, and I say it a bit loud so the lads can hear. That's a fine question, sir, says Robert, putting on an owl voice. I believe I'd ride her from behind and stick an owl bag over her head. We've a good laugh at that, and then Mulligan says Robert give Gaffney's mother some fucking disease after the state of his girlfriend. We're all laughing our heads off. And it's a lovely feeling, being in the dark with the lads, drinking ice cold Coke and stuffing me gob with sweets, and I feel sort of free for a minute, and I don't have to think about school or home or me mam. Then this voice comes across in the darkness from the seat next to Mulligan and whispers to us, fellas, keep it down. And there it was again, that rush of fucking dread, that empty feeling in my belly, like I'm a little kid again with that prick of a man my mam was seeing, shouting at me, telling me I'm shit, saying my mam should have had an abortion. I'm sitting on these lovely comfy seats in the cinema, in the dark and warm, but in my head I'm back home on the fucking tiles, being screamed at by this massive fucking man with his shirt off. And at the same time, I'm in school with a smarmy fucker like Maloney or Mrs. McGoldrick, making me stand up and read in front of the class like a retard. All my school is St. Column Kills, and all these other shits sniggering at me like I'm a retard. And at the same time, I'm coming home from a game and getting in at 11, and the front door's open, the lights are all off, and my mum is sitting there with a burnt out cigarette in the dark, and I am fucking terrified. Terrified, but I can't show it, can I? All these thoughts that are more like feelings, flash through me, and I can feel my skin crawl with it. I'm sure I stink of fear for a second. I'd say a dog would know anyway. Sour, that's what fear smells like rotten milk. Robert says, what? And I can get a better look at him. This man in a nice jacket and a fancy fucking jumper, a specky fucker with a bird beside him. He says, keep it down. Fuck me. I am filled at once with hatred for this evil little shit for making me feel like this. Like I'm a little kid getting screamed at or a retard in school. I want to break his fucking face. I want to stab the bastard with fucking scissors. But I keep thinking, calm down, mate, calm down. You can't get into trouble because you have to look after Mam. The lads all settle down a bit, and we're watching the film. But I can feel Robert getting restless beside me. He can't sit still. Sure, he's after eating a full bag of pick and mix and never had dinner, so I know the feeling. He keeps twisting and turning in his seat, and I start to snigger. Then Gaffney turns round and says, very loud, shh. Well, this sets us off, and I have this little gush of relief as we laugh. I'm bathing in it like a hot bath. I feck an M&M at Gaffney, and it bounces off his head and hits the specky stranger's shoulder. I can tell he felt it. He sort of stiffens for a split second, but he doesn't do anything about it. So I nudge Robert, and he rests one of his feet up on the back of Specky's chair, just to see, but he doesn't do anything. Fuck him. Straight away I can see he's all bark, right? He's not going to do shit. So we get back chatting and throwing sweets and having a good laugh. I'm guzzling away on me coke, so I have to go take a piss. So off I go, and most of the anger's dropped away now. It's hard to be angry at a total loser, you know what I mean? I head out to the toilets and I'm standing at the urinal when the door opens, and it's Specky. I'm not sure what to think about that. But then he moves right over beside me and doesn't unzip or anything. He's staring at me taking a piss, and I'm like, what are you watching me for, you pervert? And he says, you need to keep it down. I'm being polite, like a teacher. So I go, fuck off. And he says, oh really? You tell your little friends to shut up or I'll have you thrown out. I finish my piss and zip up, and that gives me a bit of courage. So I move to go past him and just mutter, fucking queer. And I'm not really thinking anything of it. There's gay lads in my football team. I don't have any problem. But I just want to make this prick feel as fucking small as he makes me feel. But suddenly I feel my hoodie tighten because he's grabbing me, and I'm staggering backwards into the urinal, which hits me at the back of my knees, and one of my hands sort of lashes out for support and wipes down on the front of this pissy urinal. My jaw is on the fucking floor, and I look up into Specky's face, and fuck me, it's all red blotches, and his eyes look really small, and I can tell his teeth are ground together like a fucking wolf. But for a second, I'm not scared or even angry. For a split second, I get this weird flash like, maybe someone called him queer before. Maybe this specky cunt in his nice jacket had a shitty time when he was a kid like I did. I'm completely fucking confused. And part of me wants to talk to this poor bastard to see what the fuck happened to him. But then I can see him pull up his shoulders up and down as he tries to calm down, and he goes, prick. And he walks off. And it's charging back. That evil fucker with his shirt off screaming at me. All the spit flying in my face, me on the tiles, Mam smoking and crying behind him, all in that one word. And for a second, I'm going to deck him, but I'm telling myself to calm down, fucking hell, calm down and stay out of trouble. And Christ, I think, he doesn't look hard, but he's tall enough bastard, and he sent me flying a minute ago. It feels like someone has poured petrol down my throat. All this poisonous mixture of fear and hatred. I want to poison him and burn his house down, but I'm stuck, terrified. Then the door opens before Specky gets out, and it's Robert and Mulligan. I know if I play this wrong, I'll get the piss taken out of me, and I'm fucking cold in my belly with horror. So quick as a flash, I point at Specky and shout, this fucking queer was trying to watch me piss. Mulligan cracks up, but I can see Robert's noticed my face, and he's walking into Specky, and Mulligan follows. Mulligan's the tallest of us, and he's bigger than Specky, although Robert's got more scrapping experience, and I'm the one who got cautioned by the guards. What are you fucking doing, you sick fuck, says Robert. Fucking pervert, says Mulligan, and then he blurts out, pedo, which seems odd since I'm not a kid, but I can see Specky's ears are red, and he's clenching his teeth as he goes for the door. Excuse me, he says, but the lads are in the way, and fair play, they're standing in close, making him comfortable, so I rush in close too, right behind them. Sick fuck, I say. Pedo, they should cut your fucking balls off, you're disgusting, says Robert. Specky tries to go round, but the three of us are in his face now, and I can feel this delicious hot blood feeling in my face, the feeling you get before a fight when you can nearly smell your own blood. I guess that's up.
All right, that is Shane Levy with an excerpt from Fighting the Last War. Look for him in the Jacked anthology, due out July 1st on Run Amok Crime. Now from Ireland, let's head over to Brooklyn, where we have Meredith Craig. Meredith's fiction has appeared in Variety Pack and in a forthcoming issue of Rock Salt Journal. Additionally, she writes about travel and culture for magazines, including Lonely Planet, Delta Sky, Times Union, and Vice, among others, and has written and produced for television. Now, Meredith, your piece, Living the Dolce Vita, was just what we were looking for about the time it came in. It revolves around a vaudeville or burlesque style performer slash comedian who robs an Italian jeweler at gunpoint on the way to her job as an entertainer on a cruise ship. What inspired you here?
Well, let's see. I do know my husband's uncle's wife is a cabaret singer, and she does work on cruise lines. And although I don't know much about it, it's always really fascinated me. And when I was trying to think of a character, it just kind of came to me, and the voice sort of came to me. And with that, it just sort of took off. I feel like the character was writing itself once she started talking. So.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about her, your main protagonist, that is. As I mentioned to you when we were talking earlier, this made me think of a vaudeville jazz singer out of New Orleans, Lindsay Zaworski. But in fact, you had another muse in mind entirely. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that is the cabaret singer Katie Sullivan, and she is a pretty well-known, famous cabaret singer. And although this character is nothing at all like her, but I just sort of was coming up with the idea of the type of young character who would sort of be thirsty in this way, and be, kind of desperate, but also so something about her that is just so strong and persistent, and a survivor. Like, she'll just get through anything, and including a life of cabaret. So and I just sort of like the idea that this kind of character it would be unexpected for this character to be a criminal.
And indeed it was, and that's one of the beauties of the piece. Could you read a little excerpt for us, please?
Sure, thank you. I'm also going to start at the beginning. Okay. Ginger Price's white-gloved hand twirled the diamond tennis bracelet around her wrist. "I'll take them all," she said to the shop assistant, who didn't speak English. With the other hand, Ginger pulled a Tiffany blue Glock out of her Ferragamo tote and pointed at the shop girl, who understood perfectly now. She swiped the diamond necklaces, opal stone brooches, sapphire rings, and jewel-encrusted tiaras into a velvet bag. "Don't forget the Viva diamond." Ginger motioned with the gun for her to bring the clearest red diamond ever excavated around to the other side of the counter, away from the cameras and the emergency bell. "Grazie," Ginger said, smiling through her mask. "I thought it'd be bigger, but you know what they say, with diamonds, size isn't everything." Ginger hopped on the waiting Vespa and told the driver to step on it. "Get me to the ferry station. I've got a cruise to catch," she said. The driver took off like a rocket down the winding Positano streets, pressing his foot on the accelerator even as the tires screeched. The grape arbors were no match for the construction of the motorbike, which cracked through them as easily as a curtain. "I'll give you a tip if you get me there in one piece," she said, as they blew past a church, barely missing tourists slouching across the street. Pedestrians screamed, pointing. "It's like they've never seen the Queen of England on a Vespa before." Behind her, tire marks charred the street where they had taken a sharp left, plowing past an outdoor cafe, almost knocking over a basket of lemons and coming to a full stop in front of the Dolce Vita cruise ship. In the roads above, the sirens wound around the steep cliff. Ginger jumped off the bike and peeled the latex mask off, careful not to smudge her makeup. Then she tucked a pair of diamond earrings into the driver's shirt pocket, securing the rest of the jewels into her purse, and rushed to the jetty. The blue and green water lapped the dock as if there was all the time in the world. The police cruisers screamed in the distance, getting closer. She ripped off the top layer of her pencil skirt, revealing the short black sequin mini dress underneath. A tear in the seam would need to be sewn shut, but otherwise no worse for the wear. She fluffed her hair, dropped her gun in the water, and strode up the dock. Right this way, the guard at the door said before letting her through the employee entrance. Inside, she reapplied Chanel Rouge Pirate onto her lips and entered the black box theater from stage right, just as the curtain rose. The announcer's voice boomed. Give a big round of applause for Miss Ginger Price, the sparkling songbird of the cabaret. Thank you. What a lovely audience. Ginger blew kisses. Compared to last night's funeral, you seem alive. No, really, you guys look great. She couldn't feel when the ship pushed off into international waters. But Ginger felt a sigh of relief when she was on stage, a martini in hand, picturing the Polizia shaking their fists on land. She had gotten away with it again, this time with the mother lode. Inside, among the velvet banquettes and dark bar, she could be anywhere. She performed in versions of this theater all over the world. Except for the porthole windows, she wouldn't even know she was on a ship. How many of you are rich and single? The sparse crowd was the usual white-haired retirees who adored this cruise line for the buffet and top-notch medical staff. None of them were wealthy, but that didn't matter. The only thing worse than a poor old man was an elderly billionaire who felt entitled to buy anything he wanted. She preferred her audience docile. It was easier to get the sad sacks to fall in love with her. People always ask how I got into theater. It's a depressing story. My ex-husband married my ex-wife and I settled for a life of cabaret. Ba-dum-bum-ching. That's when the music was supposed to start. She looked at Billy, her piano player. Instead of Billy, it was a handsome man of about 40 in a fitted tuxedo that looked made for Las Vegas. She raised her eyebrows and he took that as his music cue. Thankfully, the stranger knew her songbook and played with an aggression that gave new life to her performance. Her shtick about looking for love and affirmation in all the wrong places worked better when she bantered with someone close in age. By the time she got to snuff out the light, she had the crowd eating out of her espadrille, and she was practically draped across the stranger's piano. The audience clapped like they were at closing night at Dreamgirls. Little did they realize this was Ginger Price's last show. Tomorrow morning, she'd deboard the cruise, meet a man about the jewels, and disappear into Europe as Leah Rosen with 33 million euros. Her cabaret days were over. Ginger was sweating a bit, and her blonde curls were drooping. She felt exhilarated. Let's give a round of applause for the piano player filling in for Billy. If anyone knows his name, tell me. The piano player smiled and winked. Then he started in on another song, the encore, without waiting for her to tell him which one. A chill prickled the back of her neck, a performer's sixth sense. Then she understood. The song, Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. The piano player met her gaze, and Ginger wondered if he meant to arrest her as soon as the curtain dropped. It took a lot to rattle her on stage, and this wouldn't do the trick. Talk to me, Harry Winston, she yelled as she sauntered through the crowd, kissing the occasional bald head. It was there in the back, standing at the bar, she found a younger man, brown mop top, corduroy blazer. He'd have to do. She waited until the spotlight found her. Kiss me, she whispered into his ear. He looked startled, but then jumped in, bending her backward like in an old movie. She held the microphone away, and when he stood her back up, she belted out the last lyrics in her best Marilyn Monroe impression, and the crowd went wild. She dropped the microphone on the bar, grabbed the guy's hand, and pulled him towards the exit like it was all part of the act. The piano stopped mid-chord, but with all of the walkers and wheelchairs, the detective couldn't follow her out. Hand in hand, the couple ran past the bocce ball court, the pool of synchronized swimmers, the roulette table, and the singing croupier, and finally stormed through the salsa dancers shaking their replacement hips. Is this really happening? The guy asked. It's your lucky day, Ginger said. Now, where's your room?
All right, that's Meredith Craig with Living the Dolce Vita, and one of the great stories you can check out in Jacked when it's out on July 1st. Up next, we have Zephaniah Soul. Zephaniah's fiction is published in various journals that include Epiphany, Gargoyle Magazine, and Vestal Review. His first novel is slated to be published in the summer of 22. His work has received support from VONA, the Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing, and the Tin House Winter Workshop. Zephaniah, your story is simply called Len Bias. And for those of you who might not know, Len Bias was one of the very best college basketball players in the country, in the United States, that is, in 1986. And he was selected second overall in the NBA draft that June. A little over 2 days later, he died tragically of a cocaine overdose. And this was during the Reagan era's Just Say No solution. And indeed, a Len Bias law was passed a few months later, something that figures into Zephaniah's story. And I think I know the spirit in which you invoke this law in situations, Zephaniah, but in your own words, why is the Len Bias law relevant today?
Well, it's an augmenting charge, so to speak. It, as you know, it essentially it augments a drug charge, and that it allows law enforcement to pursue not only the individual who would have been the source of supply for dope that would have caused an overdose, but whoever supplied that supplier, or who supplied that supplier, so on and so forth. That you can go as far as possible. But the thing is, the story itself kind of, I don't want to give it away too much, but it essentially, it gets into issues of really humanity. That yes, there is the law, but we're all people operating in these systems. And it starts to kind of, pick apart the boundaries that we've established, between criminal and police, between good and evil, amongst races, amongst genders. And again, I don't want to give the story away, but the story kind of, picks apart at all those, often arbitrary boundaries that we've set up amongst each other as human beings. And I use the Len Bias law to kind of invoke the action and, get the momentum going in order to discuss these things.
Oh, okay, the main protagonist in your story is a drug user himself, something he's having trouble covering up by the time we catch up to him. In terms of law officials becoming quote unquote criminal in their own right and human as such, as per addiction issues, why is this something we should be writing and talking about in the present tense while still referencing 1986?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, as we all know, there's been a lot of discussions going out there in society about law enforcement's role in society, how law enforcement interacts with communities. And one of the base, underlying factors that people have to remember is that, for good or bad, cops are people, just like everyone else. They have their own problems like everyone else. Shane, for example, spoke very profoundly of people's scars and people's triggers. Everybody has their scars and their triggers, no matter what job they have or what uniform they put on, from their working shift. So the story kind of, touches upon those issues. Again, I don't want to give it away too much, but, it kind of discusses how, we're all human beings and we need to have compassion for each other, and what happens when people are navigating these societal systems that, lack compassion or are hard to engage with each other in compassionate manners, and where that becomes a challenge.
All right, could you give us a little excerpt, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll read the first 3 pages. Evil. I fight evil. And this morning, evil smells like cat piss and acetone. This Portland area heroin smells different to me, coming off a dead body. Into New York dope could be how the Best Coast Mexican cartels cut a different transport than the Beast Coast bad boys using the Caribbean corridor. Or it could just be the cat. It sits silent on the dead woman's chest, staring at the foam coming out her nostrils and mouth. I shoo it away before it eats her. I'll never forget the dead body call I responded to back in the boogie down when I was still NYPD. Me and my partner kicked in the tenement door, and the stench of a body that'd been decomposed in a week kicked us right back. Elderly man, kept to himself. Neighbors reported the smell. He died comfortably on his sofa, but he had 3 cats, and when we got there, they were still eating him. I tell all cat lovers, when you wake up in the morning and your darling little pussy sitting on your chest looking up your nose, it's not showing you love. It's waiting to see if the air is going to stop flowing in and out. in and out. Nicole. Nicole was a cat lover. I'd fight the sear in my chest from that last thought and ignore the incessant pain returning to my lower back. Fuck cats. Give me a dog any day. I tiptoe over the urine stains on the carpet past a dead woman. She's not getting revived. Heart's been stopped over an hour. The boyfriend, crouched deep in the corner of a filthy couch, took too long to call it in. Can't give her naloxone, he mutters, running grimy fingers through the hair he has left. I join the officers from PPB Drugs and Vice, Knuckles, Jeff, Donna, Bruce the Sergeant. We stand over the boyfriend. We trade looks. We don't speak yet. We know it's what. We got a Lenny. We got work to do. We got to move. Now it's time to talk. And Knuckles, all red-bearded and 6'2", does most of the talking. I do the listening. That's how these go. Best to use the federal Len Bias law here. If we get the supplier of the heroin, then the supplier, the supplier, and so on, then we can prosecute every piece of shit in the chain, up to whatever self-fashioned kingpin south of the border or over in America del Sur was responsible for providing the dope that killed this woman, theoretically at least. That's why I'm here. I listen, I take notes, I absorb everything for the federal affidavits I'll need to write. Let's get him, my little Phoebe, Bruce whispers in my ear as he clasps my shoulder and walks away. I smirk and nod. I'm the FBI guy embedded in the team. It doesn't take too long to get to the first level SOS. Knuckles, the right combination of intimidation and calm, is best at these interviews. The boyfriend gives up the source of supply, quick, a fellow named Geraldo. Knuckles doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't need to. He points to the old school flip phone on the grungy couch. Call Geraldo, he says softly. The boyfriend nods and wipes the snot from his face, grabs the phone. Now, me, Jeff, and Donna, our vehicles are positioned outside the boyfriend's house. We hide in plain sight amongst the parked cars along the street. Knuckles and Bruce's sergeant are inside with the boyfriend, monitoring his calls. Knuckles' static voice comes in over my radio. Should be 20 minutes. Donna's voice replies. Said that 2 hours ago. Jeff, doper time, baby. Doper time is right. Another hour goes by, then I'm the first to see it. We had gotten dispatched to check police reports on the identifiers the boyfriend gave us. Dispatch came back with a Geraldo Jimenez and shot his DMV photo to our smartphones. Knuckles had held up his phone to the boyfriend, showing him a rugged face framed by a baby blue background. The boyfriend mumbled, "Yeah, that's him." "That's who?" Knuckles asked. "That's Geraldo," the boyfriend said. "Good," Knuckles nodded. "What does Geraldo drive?" Now, here comes the late model Toyota Camry, bluish gray, cruising, intently obeying all stop signs and speed limits. That car is the smart car of the peddlers in the game. It doesn't draw attention to itself, not like the rides ridden by the mopes and the clowns, high-end Sabrings, rimmed-out Mustangs, custom-deckled Hummers. The Camry pulls up to the house. I get on my radio. V's arrived. The Camry stops humming. Engine off. Its door is open. S getting out. A pinup model from 1952 steps out of the car. I make a noise as something between a chuckle and a groan. A gruckle? A chone? In a way, this is all kind of funny. S is female, I say, about 5'8", blonde, approaching. Donna says, "She's got huge tits." Jeff responds, "Glad you said it." Donna, "I can say it. SOS send someone else?" Knuckles, CI says no. I close my eyes, resigned. Me, just a thought. I say we take her. Bruce is sergeant. Good thought. Do it. That's it.
Okay, that's Zephaniah Saul. Look for his piece Len Bias in Jacked on July 1st. And Zephaniah, can you give viewers an idea of when to look for your debut novel this summer? I believe it's coming out.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning it. It should hopefully be getting published by Black Spring Press group this summer. The month isn't set in stone yet, but yeah, it'll be a crime fiction as well.
Sounds great. I'll certainly be looking for it personally, and I imagine some of our viewers will as well. Okay, well, thank you to our authors, Zephaniah Saul, Meredith Craig, and Shane Levy. They are 3 of the 21 writers to check out in Jacked due out on Run Amok's new imprint, Run Amok Crime, July 1st. Meantime, please follow Run Amok Books and Run Amok Crime on Twitter. Thank you indeed, and we will see you in July. Good show, folks.